comps. I didn't prep anything for the volume comps. We'll get there because you could do like 7 videos on comps. But anyway, the volume series that Tron's mentioning in the chat, the volume series was this long-running, extremely high-end compilation series coming out of the UK. Had tons of money behind it, and got some huge gets. And it was really done at a fortuitous time, and the quality of the packaging got everybody excited, etc., etc. But what I wanted to focus on today, actually, is like we talked a bit about it in the last one. Some certain like 90s indie comps where this, like I've said before, all of this stuff, despite the Numero group, despite people resurfacing bands that never hit, you know, like Duster and whatever, there's still so much, like the comp was the thing. It was how labels advertised themselves, but it's also a way of like making a CD or an album economically feasible. And it has been from the beginning. So, I mean, what I have on the screen right now is one of the most infamous compilations ever, which is the Wailing Ultimate. This is from 1987. And it was a hugely important record in Chicago and in Boston. I mean, essentially, it's sort of split between the two of them. You know, Squirrel Bait's down in Louisville, but you know, you had the early Dinosaur before they even have to put Junior on it. Breaking Circus, I mentioned. Kasim covered their song "Driving the Dynamite Truck." Of course, Big Black. Antietam was another one of these, like, you know, legendary head underground bands at that time. You think about like 11th Dream Day. Bands like that. Of course, you got Naked Raygun, and you got Live Skull, which is James Lowe, who later is in Chavez. And so, yeah, thanks for the heads up on the DB. Pulled that back. Let me know. Yeah, they say this mic is hot, so thank you for noticing that. And Volcano Suns, who I've talked about a million times, but anyway. So, you know, like stuff like this, it's actually, this is like historic. Whether we're talking, I mean, mostly it's on vinyl, but they did issue it on CD. It's green on the CD. You know, 14, 15 bucks, if you're a collector of this type of music, of underground music, this to me is worth that. I mean, to me, when I look at this, I'm just like, yeah, that's like one of my foundational first cool fucking things I ever got as a kid. Was buying this at Newbury. Actually, no, wait, I didn't buy this in Newbury Comics. I bought it at Mystery Train. And it's just hilarious, you know. It's just, it gives you, when I talk about like period accuracy, this is the way to get the flavor of all this stuff, because it gets talked about and everyone talks about it in like recommendation culture and all that stuff. And, you know, great, but it's, this isn't exactly like that whole side of things of just being aware of bands. Like there's more there. And I think that's really what you want to be looking for. I'm sorry the mic was a little hot when I started. It's a brand new mic, so we're getting used to the dBs. But, you know, stuff like this is worth pursuing, worth getting, and again, when you're building a collection. And similarly, this is another absolutely monster, classic, iconic compilation, Big Hits in Mid-America Volume 4. This is a twin tone compilation that was just like, everybody had this. You know, this is before my time, really. This is one I, you know, was aware of because of my older sister. And this is one where, you know, it's a joke, kind of like it's a throwback to, there was this thing called Big Hits of Mid-America, like in the old grandstand rock and roll days. And so the joke here is, you know, you call it that, and it's like, you know, Bob Dunlap, Slim's Brothers, like effed up band, and like Breaking Circuit. This is where, you know, Seam and everyone else heard Driving the Dynamite Truck, this like mid-tempo 16th hi-hat song by Breaking Circus. And you know, it's the Jayhawks were like still indie and cool at this time, and Halo of Flies is on here. Another great band that if you haven't heard Halo of Flies, you can get all their stuff pretty much on one CD on an AmRep, on Amphetamine Reptile. That is they were such a great band. I mean, huge influence on the Jesus Lizard and all kinds of like my favorite music from Chicago and really from, you know, the 80s and 90s in general. But this, you know, these are like iconic ones that you know, you can still get, because despite, like I said, despite the fact that there's lots of noise around, like, you know, making sure that everything is annotated. You know, I hate this fucking annotation culture that we live in. Everyone wants to let you know that they know. Great, you have the fucking internet. How hard was it to know anything? Like, you're not proving shit. Shut up. Stop ranking everything. It's so irritating. But what happens because of that is this stuff falls under the radar because nobody actually knows or experienced it. And so it's not getting rec and it's not getting around. You can get this right now, the LP, for $7 with a promo cut. I mean, this thing is absolutely fucking iconic. And, you know, it's just silly. Like, I mean, like I said, Dunlap's and the replacements are on one cut. And this is just, it's a void because this doesn't exist, you know, now. Like, if Numero Group comes out and does a reissue of it, sure, yeah, you're all going to be, this is my favorite comp I've ever heard, right? Yeah. But it's just, there's lots of interesting voids like this that where the reality of what underground rock was, you know, at that time is one of the biggest blind spots going, and it continues through the 90s. I mean, I talked about this in an old video. If you look at the streaming numbers for these bands, the ones that haven't been hit by Numero and the reissue culture and aren't getting recycled, and everyone's getting told, you know, oh, this is where Midwest emo comes from, let's make a TikTok about it. You know, these bands are doing nothing, no numbers. And until they get that treatment, they're going to continue to be like essentially free. I mean, look, some of them have gotten surfaced and gotten passed around. Like, if you try and get Seams, the problem with me on vinyl, it's going to be like $100, which is hilarious. But, you know, there's tons and tons of stuff that just is like still in a void. So that was one part of the comp thing that I kind of wanted to mention. But this is not about value. This is just like, comps are as iconic as bands, as like the replacements, Let It Be. Either of these, you know, this cover to anybody at that time is just like, boom, everybody had this. Like, this was these were kind of like the agreed upon objects. And because they were comps and you get more than one band, like, that's good value. So comps were a big deal then. What changed after alternative blew up is that comps became a marketing tool. And I'll never forget this one. I had this shit. And like, I bought this when I was like 15, 16 years old. And it's a compilation advertising vodka. Like, that's sort of not okay. And it was a really good comp. You got Lush, the remix of Super Blast, you know, Wait Up. This is where I first heard the new stuff. Like, this wasn't out yet. Uncle Tupelo's March 16 to 20, the acoustic album, it wasn't out yet. So I didn't even know it was coming out because back then you wouldn't have like a fucking release date slate where you were going to know there's a new Uncle Tupelo dropping or whatever. So Wait Up is this beautiful song from that. I didn't know the whole album was going to be acoustic like this, but anyway, you know, you got the Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead right at the top, and it's really like EMF's hard rock. You know, we're not a dance pop band. Second single getting through, and the Mary Chain Sugar Ray. You know, this thing was like, you know, it was given away. Like, you filled out it was in Spin magazine. You filled out a postcard and sent it in, and they sent you this. And, you know, all of these still does playlists on Spotify, probably. Selling alcohol in a CD is legal and cool. Word. Yeah, no, I mean, this is sort of the thing. Branded comps like this, like, it's when you're going through and building a cart, and you're building a cart where you're trying to get value and get the most number of CDs you can, don't sleep on the various section of any store, because stuff like this is, generally speaking, totally devalued. There's not like a lot of little, and whatever value it has is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, for me, like, I want this, and I mean, someday I'll buy it back because I had it when I was a kid. There was a second one too, the next year, and I think they only did two. But, you know, talk about 1993, start shopping right at the top. Overwhelming color fast. But, you know, I mean, these are mega fucking hits of the time. There's 11th Dream Day, who I was just talking about earlier, and Best Kissers in the World. Oh my God. I mean, these were Candy Skins. These were bands that were just like the Pooh Sticks. Oh my God. This is such like mid fucking, you know, like sub major bullshit. Like, I mean, it's hilarious, but it is, and School of Fish is the fucking worst, man. I remember this band. Oh my God. This shit was so cheesy. They were from Boston, and they had this song 3 Strange Days that got on MTV, and they just, whatever, no offense, I mean, it was, they were not, there were bands like this, like You know, like Tribe was another one. They were from Providence, I think, Rhode Island. There were just a bunch of, like, I don't know if they were Berkeley kids or what, but there was Angry Salad. There were all these, like, you know, as much cool shit was going on in Boston when you talk about, like, bands that are currently now getting the huge reissue treatment, like Drop 19s, and Swirlies, and even Pixies, and, you know, Dinosaurs, obviously, from Amherst out west, ultimately. But, like, you know, for all the cool shit that was going on in Boston, there was like a whole bunch of lame shit, too. And, man, I haven't thought about them in fucking forever. I didn't realize they were even on this, because I don't think I ever had this. Sloan, you know, Nova Scotia getting wrecked. And there was this other series that I remembered. This was inexplicably, like, if you're a Gen X person, this image is so fucking iconic. Like, this comp was everywhere. It was nuts how oversaturated everything. I think they were giving it away. Like, you would go to a CD store, a record store, and there'd be like stacks of this at the counter for like $1 or something, or they give it to you. It's just such a weird thing. And O Positive got on here with their best song, Overflow, you know, in my view, you know, from the major label era. And, you know, the Poi Dog Pondering, man, that band got pushed for so long. This isn't really strong. Oh God, Third Base is on this. Prong, wow. It's just a bizarre friggin' compilation, but this and the sequel, I mean, it is the strangest thing how big these were. Alternative music it was like, how can we own this marketing-wise? And the way to try to do it was, you know, by getting these compilations, and then, you know, we're presenting all these bands side by side, you know, similar to the way that, like, if you look at grunge holistically, is grunge really even a thing? Because half those bands were hair metal bands that just changed their sound because grunge was popping off. Similarly, major, you know, record labels would just try and say alternative, because, you know, if alternative is cool, then just everything's alternative. And that'll help sell records, and that's exactly what they were doing. These comps are not good, but they were massively backed and big. And Psych Furs there's a playlist for you. Taking the Psychedelic Furs house into Welcome to the Terror Dome. And then, Big Audio Dynamite, one of the bizarre crap ones before they popped off with Globe. But one of the big drivers of this going back to the 80s was CMJ, the College Music Journal. This started out in such a strange way. Like, this is the first CMJ sampler from '87, and it's got Good Times, which is from the Lost Boys soundtrack. Shelley and Orphan in '87 were like totally unknown. Victoria Williams, like, this is Skinny Puppy back then, and the Beat Farmers. Back then, the College Music Journal was completely off on its own, doing whatever it wanted, and it had this kind of cross, you know, radio. It was this sort of organizing entity, and it got like a lot of attention from the record labels, and was able to get licensing deals with the record labels, and they put out an absolute ton of these. And it isn't up until like 1990, when it becomes, you know, essentially an outlet for promo. But, you know, this one right here, I remember this one so well. A friend's older sister had this, and it was like, you know, the Lightning Seeds, Pure, Lloyd Cole's Downtown, such a great tune. Lloyd Cole had gone solo from the Commotions by this point. Methodist Coloring Book, one of the Dead Milkmen's best pure rock songs. You know, this is the one I remember as a kid, you know, from someone's older sibling getting it from college. And this run is pretty solid. You know, it's really not until grunge happens that, like, alternative music doesn't need any help anymore. And that's sort of the big fracture, and I've talked about this on and off in various places. The big fracture is that when grunge becomes mainstream, then sort of mid-tier alternative rock doesn't need as much help anymore, and at the same time, people don't want to be marketed to, so they run away, and indie rock, you know, and a million fucking labels all start up to hide, to get away from the fact that the commodification of, like, cool music has been happening, you know, to a degree that makes it uncool, whatever. It's all bullshit, but it was kind of the flavor of the time. And I always found it really funny that when you go back and look at it and you look at what was considered like really out of the realm of normal. I mean, none of these bands could get on radio or on MTV, but yet they were on major labels. You know, like, I mean, essentially Wire Train was on basically Columbia. I mean, INXS was huge, but they needed CMJ to help promote them. That's how bad it was. You know, this is pre-Kick. Listen Like Thieves had done okay, but Listen Like Thieves was completely a college rock record. You know, What You Need was a hit, but What You Need was almost like a new wave hit. It was like an alternative hit, an REM hit, like The One I Love. Like, for INXS to go from What You Need to the world saturation of Kick was not expected. It was definitely a surprise, you know, for the label. But I pulled some ones out that, you know, I remember from the time. One of the ones that was a huge deal that you can get for nothing, well, $4.99, whatever. I picked this up for nothing on a spin through. spinART was a weird label. This label actually, this is their first thing they put out, was this compilation that has Lorelei and like Magnetic Fields, you name it. Like, you know, back when White Town was alternative and hadn't had this freak hit yet. Swirl, Small Factory, Velocity Girl, you know, Courtney Love does Baseball Bat on this one. Lilies, this compilation was enormous. And it was the first thing spinART put out in '92. It was where so many people, you know, first heard all these independent, you know, underground bands that were just on 7 inches and stuff and were in disparate communities. Like Magnetic Fields wasn't getting around yet really in '92. You know, Crayon's on here, and it's, no, it's not. It's, yeah, maybe I should clarify. This is not Courtney Love that was married to Kurt Cobain. It was a band named after her, with Loess. And if you don't know Loess, she was fantastic. She was a solo artist that was on K, and Strumpet is such a good record. There's a lot of really, really good 7 inches too that I had and loved at the time. But anyway, there's also a comp that got put out later. This is phenomenal, but it was, you know, Japan only. This has got everything you need. But anyway, yeah, sorry, a lot of assumptions I probably shouldn't make about what people do and don't know. But you know, Black Tambourine were, you know, a big Mid-Atlantic band all around the same time as all the Slumberland and those bands. But yeah, this was a massive indie comp. And again, this is how so much of this stuff got around. You know, there've been lots of them like that. This was another great one, the Hip Swing comp Kay put out. This is like right after Nirvana blew up, when Calvin was trying to get all the English bands, license all the English and European bands, like when he did, what were they called? It was Snuff. He did Snuff, and he was trying to get involved with Billy Childish and the Headcoats and stuff, and it didn't really work out. But this one has a lot of really good stuff. The Hip Swing comp, look for that. It's, yeah, no, definitely, yeah, I can see that. When that comp came out, Black Tambourine got kind of resurfaced in a weird way, because the initial comp that, you know, someone my age would have had that came out in the '90s was very different, and felt like a, you know, that band is from another time and it's over. But then they got the packaging, even everything about that weird comp that came out in the 2010s. I wasn't into. I found this as a weird one. It's a Warp sampler from '94. This was given away for a gig in Australia. Like, it wasn't, I don't even know if they released it, but yeah, it's a super early Warp comp promoting a big Australian show they did with Autechre live. And it's really funny because it was produced over there, and it's like all wrong. So it says Autechre wrong. It's spelled wrong, Autechure, and then incunabule instead of incunabula. It was this promo CD for this party that they threw, and there's nothing rare on it, really. I don't remember 100%. It's got like Quoth, I think, you know, Surfing on Sine Waves, Polygon Window, but yeah, Autechre. Exactly. yuck. But it's another weird one, and it has theoretically no value for the music that's on it, but as an object, it's really cool. It's just a really cool, again, piece of history from when Warp was starting out. Now, I had talked in the past, too, about this one, because I started out with that Homestead comp. The Peace and War comp that eventually evolved into this enormous 3 CD thing. This is a must, and it doesn't get a ton of like in general record collector circles, but be on the lookout for it. Like this expanded issue just encompasses so much great stuff. It's New Red Archives, so it's got tons of stuff from the Bay and what would become Gilman Street, etc. I think whatchamacallit, but it goes from all over. I mean, Articles of Faith from the Midwest lead it off. You got the Dicks, from down Texas, right? And who was I thinking of? Christ on Parade. Christ on Parade has to be on this. Yes. No, Christ on a Crutch and Christ on Parade both have to be on this, I think. But anyway, this is a monster comp. Such a great survey. And like you could figure out if any of these bands are kind of for you and then go and, explore them. Or Autechre. But there's another indie one from the 90s I forgot about, and I only have the promo because I was running a radio station when it came out. When the Lounge Acts Club was like kind of being threatened by a landlord or having their rent raised or something, Touch and Go, Quarter Stick, etc., that whole thing came together, and in 96 they did this CD benefit to try and relocate Lounge Acts. It was properly released with our album art and everything. It has I believe a unique version of Seems the Prize Fighters, which is better than what ended up on I think it's Are You Driving Me Crazy? I think it's that record. I think it's the one with the wave on the cover. I can't remember. But anyway, it's got Jesus Lizard. It's got Yola and the Cocktails doing Attack on Love. Labels are, the taster thing is smart. I mean, you need to do it. The thing is, when you mention like the idea of it coming back, the sort of problem with that is, as I've said in other videos, is most of these labels all their bands sound the same. So why do I need a sampler? You know what I mean? Like the label's trying to rep for a genre and like be the vaporwave label or be the ambient label, the tape label. You know what I mean? Like if the label doesn't have a diverse, set of acts and interests, then like, do I really need a survey? I don't know. It's weird. But yeah, if you can find this Lounge Acts comp, around the same time the Joy Division compilation came out, A Means to an End, which is, good. Most of the tracks on the Means to an End compilation, the Joy Division tribute from 95 or 6, have all been put out on like rarities comps of the bands that are on it, like Low. They did actually a standalone single for their version of Transmission. But yeah, these are like good, cheap comps that have good stuff on them. You should be able to find in that various section. Also, Do the Pop, talking about Australia. This thing, there's like loads of copies of this. It's got like 70 songs on it. This thing, I mean, when it came out, it was a big deal. People were really excited because it had like, the Saints cuts and good, like really super rare shit. Lime Spiders all over this. I don't know if it has the Pin Group, probably. Celibate Rifles, it. I mean, it's just, it's such a great survey of so much good shit that was going on over there. And like, not a lot of these bands came out with heavy albums full of tons of back-to-back all killer, no filler. A lot of them were limited to a few singles. So this one is a really solid one that's pretty landfilled that you can get for like, almost nothing. And another one, I sense the Now CD is coming. Funny. There was this other thing I just wanted to mention real quick because it was funny how, this is so weird. The vinyl of this goes, I may be wrong, but I love this. I'm kind of a big Miles Tilmann fan, and I love the Loess stuff on this. I have this on vinyl. It's colored, so it's like a really high end. Like it's 3 colored vinyls. It's beautiful. But like, look, it's probably not in the US. It's going for that little, but like, $15 unplayed, the full compilation digitally. And these are beautiful. Like, I mean, if you don't know Toytronic, I'm kind of a stand for this label. I think Martin and Tony did great stuff with it. Cunningham came in. And it just like, they had really good ears. I mean, I love this little EP. to find, you know, of course you got more music and stuff, but I really like these three here. These are the records I was talking about, this 3D concept set, and the fact that the compilation is relatively going for normal prices, just something I'd recommend. It was just because I pulled it, you know, and I guess I should talk about this one since we're on the genre. The Excursions and Ambience series. This was absolutely enormous in the early 90s. Again, sort of a Gen X thing, but when you know, what became IDM, when like electronica and techno took off, and it was like, oh, FSOL and bioforms, and we're all gonna, like, you know, grow cyber arms out of our heads, like, you know, optimistic, you know, accelerationism or whatever. This, I mean, God, look at that art. That shit is fucking period as hell. It's so good. I think the bubbly little font shit, it's so good. But the key thing about this one is it has the deleted song from Saw 2. This is on digital, as good as it gets. This is Stone in Focus, the 10-minute amazing meditation that, because of running length, had to be removed from Saw Selected Ambient Works Volume 2. You know, one of the linchpin records of all of ambient and electronic music ever. Aphex Twin, obviously, biggest name. This also has an incredible Spectrum cut. And you know, if you don't know Spectrum, Pete Kember, aka Sonic Boom, this is after the breakup of Spaceman 3, he goes one way and Jay Spaceman goes another and forms Spiritualized. So this is before he became like harsh noise shit, and you know, he starts doing the EAR thing and moving over with them, and Sympathy for the Record Industry, and it gets kind of harsh and like way too experimental for me. This is a great middle ground. It's a beautiful piece. And you also have a Seafield cut from Kike, their first album on Too Pure. This series, you know, tons of metal bands are bringing this art style back. I'm not shocked to hear that. This isn't going to necessarily go for cheap because of Stone in Focus. That's your issue. But this was on Virgin. I mean, Astralworks was the electronic imprint. It's owned by Universal as of 2012. I believe this was a Virgin sponsored thing, indie, pseudo indie. Yeah, I believe Virgin had their hand in it early. I'm not 100% sure, but this series, which doesn't have its own tag, unfortunately, they did. I can't remember how many they did before they quit. There's 4 for sure. This third one is the killer one you really want. The second one, yeah, this is super early. Like, this stuff is so shaky. You know, you still got like Bill Laswell shit going around. Yeah, this one is more of that. This is so straight, like, techno-futurism shit, like the first Artificial Intelligence compilation. These don't look crazy expensive, so yeah, they did 4. But the first one is awesome. This is Psychic Warriors of Gaia. This is like, if you go, this is Sub, and this is Doves. Actually, this band becomes Doves. They started out as a really shitty techno band called Sub. But I mean, for period correct, this shit is hilarious. This whole series is so on it. Again, it's not going to be cheap, but if you find it, if you see it in your various of a store you're trying to build a bag off of, this was great. FSA ended up on the last one, and LaBradford. So like, by the time of the last one, Cranky's starting to blow up, and everyone's got Precision, the first LaBradford record, and they're like, oh, this is the future now. Now it's going to be Art Deco, fucking, yeah, like, man, Cranky came out so strong. Like, full respect. If you don't have his book, You're With Stupid, that just came out, I'm sort of ambivalent about the book. It's kind of bitter. He really thinks, like, look, the guy's a legend and everything. In Chicago head, he used to work out there. I forget. I read it in like 2 minutes and I just kind of forgot about it. But man, when Bruce started this, like, they hit so hard, so fast. They had a lot of hype, of attention, because this and the Jessamine record, was like, wait a minute, holy shit, an indie can do this? Like, I've talked about this and other stuff, but yeah, when that first Jessamine record came out, it was crazy because the CD had like clear onion paper, and it was so unbelievably like slick. Nobody could believe that this band, that this label was coming out with packaging and art that powerful. So by this time in 95, they're on, Astralwerks radar, and they get a couple, Sub really were bad. And I love Doves, so I've given them plenty of money. I'm allowed to say that Sub sucked. I'm such a sucker for Doves. I'm a sucker for Coldplay. Of course I'm going to love Doves. But anyway, this one is, I would say, 3 and 4, it's a bummer that it dies after that, because the first two, like I say, are like OG, B12, super cheesy cyberpunk shit. And then the second two, it's like super fucking legit good stuff, both from Cranky and the American side, and like I say, from having Aphex, on the third one, and Spectrum, that pulse drone neon size, so good. So yeah, those are just a couple of little call outs when you're comp surfing, but yeah, I did pull it, kind of promised. So this is the first Now CD ever, 1986. Now that's what I call music. So the value, this is still the notion of the value prop. Like, I can't afford to buy all these records that are on the charts, but I love music. That's where the compilation really sort of comes from. And it really took off in England like crazy in the 80s. And part of that is because I've said in other places there's disposable income, the economy's starting to kick up, coming out of the Thatcherism. And, by 87, everyone's buying 911s and doing Coke and champagne and passing out on the trading floor. It's also a way initially, in this case, to get stuff on CDs. So prior to this, you had this series, the Pig series. What the hell was it called? If I didn't, what the hell was it called? If anybody from the UK is in the chat and can tell me, I can't remember. But there was this series that had a picture of a pig with sunglasses on it. And these cassettes would have all the novelty songs, like 19 and even Art of Noise, Close to the Edit. That's how I heard about them, was on these cassette compilations in the UK that a friend who had moved here from the UK had. And they were usually double cassettes, like in the uniform, like it was a double fold out J with a single plastic spine. And these compilations were, again, a way of value, a way of getting the chart hits without having to buy every single record. And so now in 86, this CD is where that begins. And it's really funny because usually, no, not Bloodwind Pig, I don't believe. You know what? Hold on. It's only 7:30. Let me go, because I know, no, actually it would be smarter to go to, what's his name? Peter, what's his name? Not, what the hell was the guy's name? Hold on, let me pull this out so I can just look it up. Paul Hardcastle. Paul Hardcastle's 19. No, 19. Oh my God. This shit was everywhere in 1985, let me tell you. So if I go to compilations here, I'm trying to see if I can pull this up, and then I'll be able to figure out what the hell I'm trying to talk about. 1985 on fire. Disco Summer Greatest Hits in 1985? No, it's not this. Damn. No, it was Now. Is it Now? No, this is damn it. Well, I'm not finding it, unfortunately, but I know this thing exists, and rather than waste a whole bunch of time on it, I guess I'm gonna have to figure out what the hell it is I'm talking about, and we'll come back and I'll go through those. Oh, that's so annoying, because I hate that I can remember it, but I can't tell you about it. But there were these tapes, and it was a pig, and the joke was like, you're greedy and you want all the hits, And I found one that's just a Now comp. I added. Oh, let me check. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's how the Now comp started then, was that pig logo. You got it. Anyway, yeah, this was totally it. So it was the Now series then. So that's my mistake. They adopted this greedy pig logo, and Paul Hardcastle ends up on one of these shortly after it. So these old 80s Now comps, they have weird shit on them, like the special dance mix of No More Lonely Nights, Moroder and Phil Oakey's Together in Uncle Dreams, Why, Bronski Beat. Like the early Now comps, they have really, really strong track lists. They don't get diluted until later. I mean, generally speaking, Now comps are strong, but when you look at it in the 80s, they're trying to get people to buy them, and so they're really stacking them. These are like 2 cassettes long, 2 LPs long. And yeah, it's not all great, but the point is, you can get this stuff for literally nothing, especially if you're in England. But it's a series that if you start thinking about the idea of collecting early Now comps, it's kind of actually a great take. You can get yourself like shoot for the first like 10 or 20 or so, like, you know what I mean? They only did them annually. They cost a bunch of money licensing wise, but it was worth it because they would sell out the joint. These things did really, really well. There it is. This had another Paul Hardcastle not hit, Just for Money. But you know, like Running Up That Hill, Something About You. Ooh. One of my favorite songs ever, Level 42, Something About You. Fertile Sharky. There you go. Oh, let me get back to the chat. Thanks, Jock, for that. But yeah, these comps, they were alive and kicking. You know, the number 2 Simple Minds hit after Don't You Forget About Me. Election Day by Arcadia with that horrible Duran Duran side project. This is the only good thing they did. These are pretty great comps, and they're just free. So something to think about. You know, if you're going to become like a collector, you know, of curiosities and whatever, these comps, you know, there's Susie's Cities and Dust, like I was telling you, that was a big hit. Yeah, no, I mean, they did a lot of digging all the way through to like 90. I mean, Now doesn't become Now until like, you know, the 20s here in the 90s, and then it just becomes silly, and it's all, you know, NSYNC and Britney and whatever, but throughout the 80s, they're really broad. The Blow Monkeys, I mean, come on. It's really fascinating, and like a lot of things weird, like if it would chart, it was an old song and it would chart, because that would happen all the time in England, especially around the Christmas single time. You know, that would get on there. Oh my God, Curiosity Killed the Cat. Whew. I mean, boys, looking good. Yeah. That is some fit. Man, look at those loafers. I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. If I could pull this off, I'd be dressing like this right now. So Gap Band, big fun. 5-star. Oh, that's such a classic blind spot for Americans. 5-star was so huge. Huge in the mid-80s, and well, really like 86, 87. You know, Take My Breath Away, boom. The Great Pretender, Freddie Mercury, wow, so good. You know, and you get these hits, and so that was sort of the last thing I wanted to talk about, which is that 80s and 90s one-hit wonder comps are insanely good value, because most of these bands only did one good song. So, like, while they were considered superfluous almost when they happened and when they were coming out, this is especially true of the early 2000s when you think about 90s hits comps, there's like so much stuff you can get from bands that you would not need anything else by. There's no shame and nothing wrong in 80s and 90s hits comps. So if you see them in the various, like, check the track listing, because, like, you know, some of them are going to have bands where you probably want to have actual albums by them. Like, I have, I'm not too good for this. Come on, this is iconic. This was like in every fucking kid's dorm room when I was in college. Like I want this as like a historic object for me. That's part of my mindset. They're not a band, but like, you know, a 90s comp is going to have what I got on it. But if you think about songs where like a band that is, you absolutely do not need anything else by, just think of a song like Sex and Candy by Marcy Playground, which is not a bad song. I don't mind this song at all. It's fine. And it reminds me of having to go to shitty bars to try and, you know, hook up like in no life in college. But go look at for a 90s one-hit wonder like that, a definitive one-hit wonder like Marcy Playground, who, funnily enough, the first time this song came out was on an indie comp called Deep Volume 1 on Deep South Records. Now, I don't know what the hell this was, but this is the original 251, like, first recording of Sex and Candy. And, like, from the moment this song comes out, because the comp, like, it's on a CMJ comp, CMJ 79, from the moment this song comes out, it's part of comp culture. It's like known because it was, I mean, initially it's part of comp culture because they're trying to promote it. But later, when it's interred as like a one-hit wonder, like, yeah, it's on Now, like another Now comp with like Robbie Williams' Millennium and all this shit. And like, here's another example where it's like that charted, Music Sounds Better With You, Stardust, boom. Like, this is killer. Right here. You get Saved Tonight by Eagle Eye Cherry. Like, you don't need anything else by Eagle Eye Cherry, but that song was a jam. It was everywhere. If you were live at that time, it ain't a bad idea to have it. And you get Neil Finn, She'll Have Her Way. Yeah, these are the US reboots. This is when the US started doing it. Like, they didn't start this idea till they saw the numbers on what the UK ones were doing. But yeah, this is the start of the US one. And 3 is really pretty strong. Everybody. And so, I mean, you know, they only go as low as $6, so it's I don't know. But this was I remember this one. This was like one of the big pushes when they started it. You get Bop, all these songs. Like, I don't need anything else by them. I don't need anything else by Radiohead. Karma Police is, you know, I'm just kidding. But anyway, a lot of these tracks are good indicators. Yeah, this thing, I mean, this cover, if you were alive in the late 90s, was just fucking, you walk into Best Buy, it was like 500 copies of that. One of the things, like I was saying, one of the things you can look for is when does it start becoming, you know, 90s one-hit wonders comps. And if you go through and start looking in the early 2000s, there you go, nonstop 90s rock. And these comps, like, there's so many bands that there were so many more one-hit wonders in the 90s than there were in the 80s. And Steal My Sunshine, Butthole's Pepper, Pets by Porno for Pyros. Like, look, I have a bunch of I have both the record. You don't need them. This is the song. Like, yeah, there's a couple others if you're a Jane's Addiction fan. Verve Pipe's The Freshman, Blind Melon, No Rain, Lump. Like, Brick, Ben Folds, you know what I mean? I don't need anything else from these bands. But like, if you look at the running order on this is literally like walking into a bar in the 90s or whatever. And yes, they were advertising the hell out of these. No question. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Sorry, hold on one sec. My Wi-Fi got messed up. I was afraid the stream was messed up, but I was connected to the wrong network. Mr. Jones, I'm sort of a Counting Crows apologist. I like these. I like their greatest hits. I have their greatest hits. Like, you know, Angels of the Silence is kind of a jam. Long December, another, like, you know, you're a loser in a bar and you don't have a girlfriend song. But, you know, this is good hunting. 90s comps and 80s comps. You can really, like, and then there's the Billboard series, right? Like, this is sort of the ultimate. These things were flying. 20 is pretty good, you know, and like, you're getting all these songs that you don't need necessarily. It depends on the person, but you're gonna get the one song. Like, I only want to be with you on Physical, but I don't need anything. I don't need like Time or whatever the fuck else Hootie and the Blowfish the other singles were. 1 Week, like, Jesus Christ, I would throw up if I heard that song at this point in 2001. But now when you go back, like the theme from Friends by the Rembrandts, who actually started out as a pretty cool jangly band. Mr. Jones is a weird one for you. I can see that. I agree. I think it's a good song. Like, the guy is such an ass. Like, it makes it hard. He was such a weird, like he was really annoyingly full of shit when they blew up, the singer from Counting Crows, and like he had real mental health issues, so I don't want to be like, you know, not sensitive to that, but he did not handle success well. He was one of those guys who was like, oh, I always knew it was going to happen. You know, like initially some really bad stuff came out interview wise where he just looked like a dick. Big Shiny 90s is a great one, right? Okay. Silver Chairs Tomorrow. Yeah. Oh, love this song, man. And I mean, they're kids. You got to give it to them. These comps are insane. And if you can get them for nothing, I mean, like, just what a good mix. You know what I mean? It's like a fucking mixtape. The Impression I Get, the Boss Tones, Never Let You Go, the Marshall Crenshaw ripoff, Third Eye Blinded. There's Pets again, and there's What I Got, like I said. There's so much value in these. And again, if you're somebody who wants the whole Elastica record, which I think that first album is great, then great. But if you're not, you probably remember Stutter, and, you know, I don't understand why Faith No More's Epic is on a 90s comp. What? That came out in like 88. What the fuck? Anyway, no accounting for accounting, I guess. Impression that I get. I need to add that to the soundboard. Oh, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, man, yeah, no, that's money.
So you can get the soundboard of the Impression I Get. I gotta update it, I do.
You're fucking joking.
But yeah, these one-hit wonder songs like this, Three Doors Down's Kryptonite, they can kind of be a good way to go and find somebody who's got one of these comps for nothing, and then you can just kind of, you know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to fill out, I mean, of course, this was the big one. Rhino came in and just, you know, got it all. And these things, it's just silly that like, there's somebody trying to get this for $50. I mean, these are such landfill special markets, like UMG licensing bullshit box sets, when almost everything on this would be, you know, absolutely available on any of these. And there's a lot of value there. Is it kind of diffuse? Is it not concentrated? Yeah, it's not. But it's solid. It's a solid way to get some value. And again, you know, pepper the collection with things that you might want to listen to, but you would not want to load up on, because you can track out like 4 or 5 onesie twosie one hit wonders that way. You just pick that song, whether it's like, you know, Sex and Candy or the friggin' Verve Pipe or whatever. Things that ended up on these landfill comps in the early 2000s, there's so many of them, and you can get it for nothing. And like I say, if you really like or get turned on to something you haven't heard before, which you probably have, then you can explore that further. And it, you know, it's, again, it's an option. When you got to think in terms of rounding out your carts, right? Like if you're going in for something that you want, you've got a cart built up, like you want to maximize your value. Comps can be a great way to do it. You know, this one in particular, I didn't pay much for it, but this is the first CD. I looked up and researched like what was the first now CD, and it's this. And you know, again, you talk about how much they spent on licensing and stuff. Like, holy crap. Absolute Beginners, Bowie, Sledgehammer, Peter Gabriel. I don't know if much of this is going to show up, but you know, they did not cheap out on this first CD. I mean, I don't know they had to spend that much for the Communards Don't Leave Me This Way, but like West End Girls, Pet Shop Boys, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Tears for Fears. Like, it's pretty crazy. Sly Fox's Let's Go All the Way. Total monster, 80s one-hit wonder. But the now comps are interesting because similar to the Billboard comps in America, they are timepieces, and that's sort of the last point I would want to make about comps. The Billboard comps, the now comps, you know, especially the early ones, they really don't just function as like to get you to buy them by having hits. They're really kind of, you know, time capsules. They're really kind of time capsules of what was going on at the time. And I talked about this in an earlier stream relative to erasure, right? Like you can get pop and you've got 20 erasure hits, but if you actually get the albums that those hits are from for nothing, then you're getting an impression of what erasure was doing at that time. And similarly, these comps were not necessarily all about getting the hits. They were about being surveys of the time period and spreading that net kind of as wide as possible, because you want to attract buyers from all different, you know, like Patti LaBelle's on here, Jermaine Stewart's We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off. You know, we can have some cherry wine. But, you know, it's a way to look at expanding a collection, particularly with CD. But, you know, if you're a vinyl person, these go for nothing too. So, you know, comps, we can go forever on comps, but it is something you want to, you know, you want to think about, because again, when you look at like No Thanks, the punk rock, Ryko box set, and, the one that we just had up, here, where was that? You know, when you look at these things and like the shoegaze box sets, that have come out, there were two of those, the Brit box, the silly packaging on these, you know, and what, I don't know why, like it's set up like a Starbucks thing. Like the idea that you would pay this kind of money for this crap when you know, it's spread across all these other ones, really silly.
$70. That's a slab of piss in a pack of Winnie Blues. Get the boys round. Have a good night.
I would keep it in mind. And there's no end to it, you know. There's no end to how many different genres. Again, you could find somebody that has all those old indie, you know, punk, legit cool comps I was talking about. You know, and then on the first compilation, when I talked about, you know, Tuatara and the Flying Nun compilations, it's a great way to fill in a bag. Yeah, and as mentioned, you can meet your shipping medium, right? Like if somebody's got a $50 cutoff, or if you get 6 CDs and you're helping us move stock, then we'll pay, the shipping's free. Those are all little things you want to do to cost average yourself into a worthwhile bag. So yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to go through for this one. I mean, if I do get into the volume comps, that would be that would definitely be its own. That would be like a good half hour. These things were incredible, but maybe we'll do that because of the holidays. I haven't done the last 2 Sundays, so I will, even though it's going to be New Year's Day, I believe. I'll try and make sure I'm on Sunday afternoon for any EU and UK people that are coming through. And maybe we'll go through the volume comp, because that would obviously land better for that audience anyway. They were over here, but they weren't nearly the phenomenon that they were in the UK. And there's a whole ton of like Warp. I just showed that one anomaly because it was next to another CD I was pulling. There's a whole ton of stuff for electronic and ambient and D&B and IDM that we could get into. So whether or not I go back to back with comps or try and do a more targeted artist-based one for Sunday, that'll be out there. We will get to that. So yeah, I mean, thanks for coming through again, everybody, and see you elsewhere online. So peace. Managed to avoid the emo diaries. I could have pulled it. I also could have pulled like the Jade Tree comps. I spared you a lot.